Next question, what are your go-to meals? Yeah, so I'm a big fan of eating similar foods at similar times on similar days for the most part. Not 100%. I don't get that super duper anal or obsessive with it, but when I'm working, like I really like routine and I like doing the same things at the same times on most days just because it helps me limit decision fatigue as well as reduces my chances of making poor decisions as well as it's just convenient. And I choose foods that are very convenient, but also not so convenient that they're just packaged foods that make me feel like shit or, inflame me and end up making me want to eat a shit ton of food and feel terrible afterwards. So I stick with mostly whole foods. I usually have 1 to 2 breakfasts, 1 to 2 lunches, and a little bit more variety with dinner. But usually I've got like 4 to 5 main dinner meals. I'll talk about a couple breakfast options and a couple lunch options, and then dinner I'll kind of just talk about like the way I think about going about it. So breakfast these days I either have for like my protein source, I'll have either some eggs and egg whites all mixed up. I also add some cottage cheese to that just to add some extra protein, and eggs and cottage cheese is actually pretty delicious. Don't knock it till you try it. Or I will have a little bit quicker option if I don't feel like making eggs. I will go with a big bowl of Greek yogurt and then I mix whey protein into that. Right now I've been using a cookies and cream. I think it's called cookies and cream from BPN, but you can really use any protein. I like vanilla or like cookies and cream style protein for that, but chocolate's pretty good too. And I basically mix that in. I put a couple scoops of protein in first. So like 45 grams, 50 grams of protein just from that. And then I add yogurt to make it more into a paste. So it takes a little trial and error to get the yogurt to protein mixture right. But you can make it a little more gooey. You can make it a little more pasty. If you want it a little more gooey, you can add some water to it or whatever, just to water it down a little. But make that, and then I put in some fruit as well as some honey. So those are my 2 protein sources for my 2 different types of protein breakfast. I don't do both of those in the same breakfast, but each of those provides me with 50 to 60 grams of protein right off the bat. And I think having a high protein breakfast is a great way to start the day, especially if you struggle with either overeating later in the day or if you struggle to get enough protein in. Start the day strong with a big protein breakfast and you're going to be off to the races. For carbs, I usually go with either a few slices of sourdough toast with some peanut butter, maybe a chopped up banana and some honey, or I will go with some rice and grinds, usually 2 servings of rice and grinds. Rice and grinds is something that I've never seen in grocery stores. I always buy it online. It's from Pride Foods, and it's a great oatmeal alternative. I mentioned in the last episode, I don't digest oatmeal all that well, but rice and grinds is obviously rice-based, and it's delicious, and it kind of has a similar feel to oatmeal, and you can add similar things to it. So I'll do that, and I'll add some berries to it, usually frozen berries, because the frozen berries act as a good way to cool it off so you can eat it sooner. And because the oatmeal is hot, it makes the frozen berries less frozen. So it's a good little double win there that I have discovered over time. I'm sure other people have discovered that too. You can add that to oatmeal too. If you handle oatmeal well, you can try that for sure. But that, or I'll have a everything bagel with peanut butter, honey, and maybe some chopped up banana, just depending on the day and how many carbs I need to eat that day. But big protein, big carb breakfast, nothing crazy with the fat because breakfast is usually my pre-training meal. Unless I'm running, then I usually do my run before I eat anything. And unless I'm doing a higher intensity run, then I'll eat something. But easy, low intensity zone 2 runs, I don't really need to eat much. If anything, I'll have some liquid carbohydrates in the form of Vitargo or something along those lines. Lunch, I'll either have a factor meal. If it's like a day where I don't feel like making anything, I'll have a factor meal, sometimes 2. Usually factor meals are anywhere from 500 to 600 calories, and they've got 35 to 45 grams of protein in them. And they've got some good vegetables, good solid starches, good solid proteins, and they're very convenient. And for a meal delivery, meal prep company, they taste pretty damn good. So I'll have those if I'm crunched for time, or I will make a big triple decker sandwich with 3 slices of bread. Sometimes I'll even do 2 separate sandwiches with 4 slices of bread. Again, depending on how many carbs I need that day, with some turkey, some ham, and maybe some roast beef sometimes, and some cheese, pickles, cucumbers, some spicy mustard, something along those lines. Very, very basic stuff. Or if I have some beef and rice sitting around, I'll just make some sort of beef and rice bowl. Beef and rice is one of my staples, and you can make it taste many different ways by adding certain things to it. You can make it more of a Mexican bowl, more a classic beef and rice bowl. You can even add some eggs into it. It can be like a breakfast bowl, or you can switch those that rice out with potatoes and make it even more of a breakfast bowl. For dinner, we usually do some sort of lean meat. We really like red meat, so leaner cuts of steak, leaner ground beef, ground bison, things along those lines. I'll either make some homemade burgers, or we'll do some beef and rice, or my wife will make some Asian meatballs with white rice, or she'll make some meatloaf that kind of look like burgers, but the seasoning we put in them makes them taste more like meatloaf, and they're delicious. Sometimes we do some salmon, some fatty fish, usually once a week, sometimes twice. Sometimes we do some chicken, and that is pretty much the staple for dinner. And then my staple carbohydrates are always going to be either sweet potatoes, white potatoes, or really any type of potato. I just digest that a lot better. Or white rice. Sometimes we'll do some couscous or some quinoa. I don't quite digest that as well as white rice or potatoes, but it's not quite as bad as like crushing a bunch of oatmeal for me or whole wheat stuff. So that's really person dependent. It's totally up to you what you go with for carbs. And then once in a while, we'll just do some like pasta. I also digest pasta really well. And we'll mix either like some chicken and pesto into that or some meat sauce, and it's delicious. So that's my go-tos, and they're all pretty simple. Dinner takes a little bit longer. My wife and I kind of trade back and forth between who cooks. She definitely cooks a little more often than I do, but we both take some of that share. And usually once a week or twice a week, we will get some sort of DoorDash or takeout. And usually once a week, we go out to eat. And that works pretty well for us. So nothing too crazy, but also I like to prioritize foods that are going to nourish me and help me perform better, not just with training, but also throughout the day working. And if I eat a bunch of processed stuff or like super high sugar, and it's not like right around training or later in the evening before bed, that's usually when I eat my less favorable foods. Then I feel shitty afterwards, and I just don't perform as well sitting here behind my computer. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that adds up.